Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you. Hope you all are doing very well and keeping safe. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on Clinical Research Center grants. My name is Himashri and I am a Senior Executive Science Communications at the DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, let me quickly give an introduction to DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, or India Alliance for short. India Alliance is an independent, dynamic public charity that funds research in health and biomedical sciences in India. India Alliance invests in transformative ideas and supportive research ecosystems to advance discovery and innovation to improve health and well-being. We are being funded by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and the Wellcome Trust, UK. Today, we are here to learn more about one such grant, the Clinical Research Center grant. But before we begin, a few housekeeping pointers for you all. For the first slide. So the first point is that this webinar is being recorded for our information. We have videos and microphones of all of you, the attendees, switched off during the event. You can leave any question you have during the webinar in the question box. Please question box that is being showed here. You can see the question box. You can enter any question you have while the sessions are going on here. And during the question and answer session, you can raise your virtual hand, which you will be able to see as a as a hand being drawn here on the fourth point here. So please raise it and we'll help unmute you and you can ask your question and talk to the speakers. In case you find that the webinar ended abruptly due to any technical glitch, please do join back using the same link that you have. We look forward to your feedback after the webinar. And also you can find out more about our programs, workshops by visiting the visiting the social media handles displayed on the screen. Next slide, please. So next, you will see the agenda for today's webinar. So we first start with an introduction as we have done now. Then we go to Dr. Venkata Subramaniam Ganeshan for his experience as a CRC grantee. And we'll understand more about the CRC grant and its application process and end with the open question and answer session. So for the first talk, we have with us Dr. Ganeshan Venkata Subramaniam. Can we go to the next slide? So Dr. Venkata Subramaniam is a professor of psychiatry at National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. He is known for his studies in the field of schizophrenia, transcranial direct current stimulation, brain imaging, neuroimmunology, neurometabolism, and several other areas of biological psychiatry. He was awarded the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology for his contributions to medical sciences in 2018. He is also a DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance Clinical Research Center grantee, and he's here today to share his experiences on how to form a team for drafting the CRC grant application. So I'll now hand over the screen to Dr. Ganeshan for his presentation. So I'll be making Dr. Ganeshan a presenter. Please share your slides and we look forward to your presentation.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And my slide is visible, right?
Clearly.
Okay. Thank you. So good afternoon. Thanks India Alliance team for inviting me to share the experience towards forming a team for drafting the CRC grant. Actually, this meeting brings me a kind of nostalgic experience. About 3 years before, I was one of the attendees of a CRC outreach program that happened at NIMHANS, and I learned a lot from this from that program, and I hope the interactions during this session will help our participants. The clinical research center that we have been awarded is anchored on the theme of neuromodulation in psychiatry, and which is kind of based on translational neuroscience. And this is the team of the neuromodulation CRC that we have from 3 institutes, National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, Central Institute of Psychiatry, CIP, Ranchi, and Kasturba Medical College, KMC, Manipal. And we also have several international collaborators that will help us in implementing the CRTP program, that is the Clinical Research Training Fellowship Program. Now, when I was kind of reflecting on what was our experience when we formed a team for drafting the CRC grant, I kind of could link many of the important factors that we considered and which we thought as very important in making the application through several C's. I have listed those C's, and I will take us all through different of these C's as we go along. The first is the concept or the conceptual focus of the CRC. If you look at the web page of the India Alliance, I think the aim of the scheme described by the India Alliance team is something which is very, very important, and we all need to pay a very close attention. That is, the scheme aims to improve clinical and public health research ecosystem, and the focus is on human resource development, improving the supervision, mentorship, as well as creating resources that involve equipment and empowering or leveraging the administrative skills. And these are essentially conducted across different centers. So the CRC is essentially a virtual clinical research center that connects multiple collaborating institutes. So in that context, we identified the concept of our CRC application on translational neuroscience, and we envisage to move beyond the bench to bedside model in terms of having an inclusive approach that involves not only researchers from multiple different backgrounds, but also to reach out other healthcare professionals that are not researchers, and several other stakeholders like patients and caregivers, and then industry partners. And we also envisage to make some policy impact. So with respect to the concept, these are the important objectives. That is translational disease modeling, disease model to discovery science. Essentially, these are related to conducting neuromodulation research in psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia and depression. And importantly, we have an objective where we wish to move the science to society by involving all stakeholders to evolve guidelines for NIBS, that is non-invasive brain stimulation techniques. And very significantly, we are committed to create sustainable human resources through a multi-pronged approach. We have a clinical research training program fellowship that will generate clinician scientists, and we also have initiated several virtual learning programs and in the process of launching hands-on workshop to enhance the practice standards of NIBS. So this is the overall conceptual focus. So once we have the conceptual focus, then the objective will be to look for conduciveness, the conduciveness of centers, because CRCs are essentially multi-institute collaboration. So we look for centers that are conducive, that is, they have the potential to implement the research concept. So some of the important resources that we look for in these centers are ability to implement one of the neuromodulation technique that is called as the electroconvulsive therapy. Another neuromodulation technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation with some advanced implementations that involve neuronavigation principles, as well as yet another neuromodulation technique that is called as transcranial direct current stimulation and its advanced variation, that is a high definition technique. Now, it is not necessary that a center should have all of these techniques and resources, but at least some of them is very important, so that the remaining could be looked at in terms of obtaining through the CRC grant as an equipment and resource component. So having this kind of conduciveness exploration helped us to identify two other institutes, that is Central Institute of Psychiatry, Ranchi, as well as Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. Now, once we have the conceptual focus, we also made the components of the CRC in alignment with the themes that are proposed in the India Alliance website. There are two types of theme. One is the cross-cutting theme. There are several examples that are given. We chose the big data and disease modeling, and also amongst the vertical themes, we chose the mental health, that is psychiatric disorders. So these are the different components which are in alignment with these vertical and cross-cutting themes, that is patient-oriented clinical research, multi-level assessment, which will generate big data, and clinical research training program, which will generate clinician scientists, as well as several other training program proposals. And the fourth component is the science to society. Now, within these centers, then we identified a set of faculty researchers that have complementary expertise. That is, when we are looking at a clinical research center with a broad objective, looking at different facets of any research domain, not every center will be equipped with all the expertise or all the resources. So we look for complementary expertise. So the teams at different centers with complementing skill set that will help us to achieve the envisaged concept and component. So for instance, some of the research techniques that we proposed apart from the neuromodulation techniques involve magnetic resonance imaging, some of the advanced neuromodulation experiments like perturbation based cortical plasticity studies, and EEG and HRV, that is heart rate variability based experiments, and genetic analysis. For instance, while NIMHANS has a good imaging facility, Central Institute of Psychiatry has comparable imaging facility, but they have a much better EEG facility. So we thought having this kind of complementary skill set and complementary resources will help in knowledge transfer and skill building, not only between the collaborating centers, but also through the learning programs that are envisaged under the CRC can spread and scale the information reach to wider community. For instance, if you look at from the clinical perspectives, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal is a general hospital-based psychiatry setup with a very strong community outreach. So we kind of had a mix and match of these complementary skill set and complementary resources that are available across the centers, so that the inclusiveness of the objectives can be optimally achieved. Then we looked at how cohesive the team could be, that is in terms of how much are we aligned in terms of their academic and research interest. It was fortunate that some of the collaborating institute team members have had previous collaborations, so some of us knew the other team member very well, and there were many other instances of working together and interaction in conferences and other academic meet made us kind of feel very cohesive, and we were quite hopeful that combining all the centers together with these team members will lead to a good proposal. Once we have identified the concept components and then the cohesive team, what is very important, especially when we look at the CRC grant application, there are significant components with respect to the commitment details which we need to propose. Number one, amongst the team, we wanted to ensure that all of us are committed to the cause of the vision and mission of the proposed CRC. And very importantly, time commitment is significant. Suppose that could be an expert researcher, but that faculty could be already preoccupied with several big projects, then devoting time to the CRC will become a challenge. So time commitment is something which we specifically look for, and how much resources that are available within the institute, as well as in that particular researcher's lab, can be made available to the CRC so that we'll be able to use the budget more efficiently, as well as how much the researcher is willing to offer mentorship in terms of their commitment, so that that will help us to make a very strong CRTP fellowship application. Equally important is the commitment of the respective administration, because CRC is an institutional program. So these are some of the important points that we looked at once we formed the team, looked at each of these centers and interacted with amongst the team and confirmed. So that made us to propose clinical research training program fellowship, and we have actually successfully got all the CRTP fellows position filled up, which especially amidst the COVID was a major challenge, but despite that we could get a good quality candidates who are getting admitted into these fellowship program. So once we have done all this background work, right from the time of preparing the grant, as well as follow up after the grant submission, and importantly, pre-interview, we had many team interaction across centers. So I feel that the team across centers should be communicative. They need to talk to each other, and I am quite happy to say that the PAs of the other two institutes are always available to me as a as early as possible within a phone call. Means many a time I can just reach out to them within few minutes. So that kind of communication and conveying our expectations and understanding what the complementary expectations were was very important. And pre-interview preparation was very significant, because that is when we actually ran a kind of mock interview, and different of the team members across the centers kind of chipped in with their ideas and with their probable content of the responses. So through this interaction, we understood the capacity of each of the team and the center. But importantly, we also learned about the constraints or the limits of each of the team. And that actually made us be aware of how we can kind of fill those shortcomings by complementing the skill set or the additional expertise or a different type of expertise available in a different center. And that also helped us to assign defined roles for team members. And during that during those interaction, apart from the capacity understanding, learning the constraint, we also went through what are all the potential challenges that may come up for the implementation of the grant program, and looked at how we can handle that, and in terms of looking at the specific contingency plan. Of course, one important C that we did not anticipate was COVID, which kind of caught us off guard, and of course all of us have gone through challenging times, and now things are settling down. So starting from the concept component, and then cohesiveness and several C's, and importantly communication and making ourselves very clear, enhanced the cohesiveness, and in turn it helped the team as such, the CRC team as such, to gain a lot of clarity. We were very confident with respect to what we have proposed and what we want to do, and we have been able to implement quite a bit. Of course, certain parts are lagging because of the COVID challenges, but now we are catching up. But in the end, maybe just before the interview, after the interaction we had amongst the team through a virtual meeting, we were very constructive in the sense like we were very happy that the CRC grant opportunity, which I also want to mention, is a very novel kind of option that was available. That was the first time India Alliance has called for this CRC grant. It had a lot of flexibilities, a lot of avenues were very open-ended. So it helped us to explore and formulate a comprehensive and optimal plan to enhance the neuromodulation practice standard in psychiatry. So overall, the experience was very constructive in the sense we learned from all these interaction, and irrespective of the outcome of the likely outcome of the grant, means at the end of the pre-interview interaction, we were uh, very happy and felt very heartened that the experience itself has taught us so much, and irrespective of what happens, what might have happened after the grant outcome, we were quite satisfied with that. But fortunately, we got funded, and we are now launching and in the process of initiating studies under both CRC as well as the CRTP fellowships are also ongoing. And so this is a summary of the experience of forming a team for drafting the CRC grant. I'll come to the last C if there are any comments. I'm happy to listen and learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the informative presentation. So, since we have some time, if there are any questions, I again request the participants to raise their virtual hand, and we'll unmute them. So I do not see any questions right away. So maybe there will be a few more towards the end. So in the moment, we can now, I think, go to the next session, and we'll come back to the question and answer session towards the end, so that any doubts they have will be clear. Next, now our next presenter is Dr. Surender Mohan, who is a grants advisor at India Alliance, and his role at India Alliance is to liaise with the scientific community and handle the grants processes. So he has a master's degree in biotechnology and has completed his PhD in infectious diseases from JNU Delhi. Owing to his inclination towards science and passion for teaching and scientific research, he has served for a brief stint as an assistant professor at SRM University, Haryana. He has also received the International Student Fellowship to pursue research at the National University of Singapore. With all this, I'll now invite Dr. Surender to talk more about the CRC grant and clarify all the doubts that you have. Surender, you can now start your presentation.
Thank you, Himashri. Just share my screen. Could you please confirm if my presentation is visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Great. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Surender. I'm a grants advisor at DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance. And in this presentation, I'll take you through the eligibility requirements, the application process, and the format for the application for applying under the scheme, which is Clinical and Public Health Research Center Grants, or CRC in short. So this is a flagship competition which India Alliance offers for institutions to support a collaborative team to address a very important health challenge in India. So the CRCs aims to improve clinical and public health research ecosystems in India to bridge gaps in human resource, supervision, mentorship, equipment, and administration through establishing a virtual CRC center. So these CRCs are envisioned as research-oriented centers with a focus on biomedical research problems. preferably involving multiple institutions. So these can be either cross-cutting or vertical research themes, but must be within the remit of India Alliance. So this is not a mandatory criteria, but this scheme encourages international collaboration as well as a good gender balance in the team. The scheme also provides provisions to develop physician scientists through the CRTP provision. The remit of the CRC program is to establish virtual research-oriented centers to improve the clinical and public health ecosystem in India. So therefore, any Indian institution in collaboration with other institutions or even with global partners can apply under the scheme. And as mentioned earlier, the scheme encourages its applicants to have international collaborations, although this is not a mandatory criteria. So under the scheme, funding can be requested up to 10 crores Indian rupees for a 5-year project duration, and funds can be requested for hiring budding clinical and public health researchers, or funds can be requested for purchasing equipment and research supplies, and even for maintaining clinical and population cohorts. In addition to that, funds can be requested for training the early career researchers as well as strengthening the research management structure at these host institutions. So please note that all the designated host institutions within India or overseas in your grant application must be not for profit and must be financially eligible for funding. This is a mandatory requirement for submitting a grant under this application scheme. So let us see the key requirements for the CRC application. As I mentioned earlier, CRCs are envisioned to include more than one institution. But in case, if the applying institution applies for a single institution CRC, then a strong justification would be required. In such cases, multiple departments in that institute should come together and form a team. Now, research proposal from the existing institutions should provide evidence of access to an in-house or external clinical study design unit, or CSDU in short. It should also provide relevant details of the training programs in that institution. CSDUs are specialized biomedical research units that design, centrally coordinate, and analyze clinical studies. Some CSDUs specialize in different methodologies, others in disease, others are focused more on the disease type, whereas some are more generic. So there is no specific format from India Alliance in this regard when you write about the CSDU in your application, but the CSDU must address requirements of the proposed research. The proposal must include components of human resource training and mentorship, and so the training of MD and PhD students should be a critical part of the proposed project. A detailed training plan as well as a plan to evaluate its success would be very much required. Again, as I mentioned, an appropriate research management plan should be in place at the coordinating institutions, and funds can be requested for strengthening the research management structure at these institutions. The application should also outline a resource sharing plan and demonstrate sustainability after the funding is over. Having said all these points, what is important is good grantsmanship. I would briefly talk about what makes an application strong. So first is motivation. The team should be highly motivated. It should come together, it should communicate, as Dr. Venkat has already mentioned. India Alliance does give weightage to the specific, to the scientific productivity of the applicants, like publications, the conferences they have attended, the conferences they have organized, and also the track record of mentoring research aspirants. The question to be addressed via the proposal is a significant factor. The question must be very important, relevant, and must be feasible within the 5 years duration. The team should come up with the idea and they should be able to confidently and convincingly present their proposed idea. We look for good grantsmanship, which include language, format of writing, and plagiarism. Plagiarism is taken very seriously in India Alliance, and relatively higher plagiarized proposals, including self-plagiarism, can get rejected at the preliminary screening itself. So we believe the proposals are the ideas of the team, and for best outcome, the selection of the host institution, the selection of collaborator must be well thought through. Therefore, justification for each selection should be very clear, and one must keep in mind to provide appropriate justification for anything that goes into the application. So this scheme also provides a provision to develop physician scientists through the CRTP program, the Clinical Research Training Program, and it aims to develop physician scientists to strengthen the clinical research ecosystem specifically. This is an optional program under CRC, and any Indian institution applying for CRC can collaborate with eligible partners and apply under this scheme. So up to 12 fellowships will be available each year, and value of each fellowship will be 50 lakhs Indian rupees. Further, this is a 3 to 4 year mentored research training fellowship for medical graduates as well as postgraduates. So graduates and postgraduates can be from Ayush, nursing, dentistry, optometry are also eligible to participate under this scheme. So these are some examples to highlight that this program will also support such disciplines. So to apply under this scheme, a strong commitment from all participating institutions may be required, which may include infrastructural support, which may include the protected research time for these trainees, and also the mentorship plans. Participating institutions should also designate coordinators and a program head who should be based at the lead institution. It can opt for any researcher who are involved in senior clinical or public health or basic science research. As part of this program, India Alliance highly encourages the trainees to receive a degree, say MPhil or PhD or any certification at the exit point. And these selected trainees would be part of the India Alliance Fellows Network and would be able to participate and collaborate with other India Alliance Fellows. India Alliance also strongly encourages inclusion of institutions from underserved areas, and institutions must widely advertise and seek applications from these institutions as well. Let us see the application cycle. We have 3-level screening system in our application cycle. The first is the full application. So once the application is submitted, the office scrutinizes them for eligibility and competitiveness, which includes the grantsmanship and plagiarism checks. Once done, once the internal screening is complete, these applications are then reviewed by the grant screening committee, and this committee gives specific feedback on each application. These comments, this feedback help the committee to shortlist the application to the next round. So the applications declined at this stage generally receive specific feedback to improve their proposal. Then the ones which are shortlisted are then sent to the international peer review. This is a detailed and elaborate review process which is followed by the funding committee interviews. So all the peer review applications would normally be brought to the interview unless recommended otherwise by the funding committee. For example, application may be rejected based on unsatisfactory external review. So the funding committee would interview the PI, and if desired, up to 2 co-PIs on each application can participate in the interview. So this entire cycle, entire processing since the receipt of the full application is approximately 10 months. I would like to highlight the resubmission policy here. So if an application is unsuccessful after the funding committee interview, the PI cannot reapply to the scheme as a PI unless it is recommended otherwise by the funding committee. The PI cannot reapply as a PI in this scheme, but they can apply as a co-PI in the next round or future round. If an application is declined at the screening stage, screening by the screening committee, this condition would not be applicable. They are eligible to apply for next round. So we request prospective applicants to visit our website for the updated application call dates and deadlines. The current CRC was launched on 2nd of May 2022, and the deadline is 15 June 2022, 2 p.m. Now let us see the full application format. To download the application form, please visit the Clinical and Public Health Research Center web page, and under Application Process tab, you will find the link to download the form. When you download the form, you will be able to see there are 15 different sections to this application format, and it is mandatory for the applicants to complete all the sections in the application and submit in this sequence itself. Now, we'll go over each section in detail, and I will highlight some important points that applicants must keep in mind while filling the application. The first is the general instruction. So while the general instructions are quite detailed in the form itself, I'll try to highlight a few key points here. Please, the first is please read through all the instruction in each section before filling the form. And while filling the form, please use only Arial font size 11 with single spacing and one line space between the paragraphs. This is very important to maintain uniformity in the application. All the questions in the application are mandatory, and applicants should not leave any column blank. In case there are any questions not relevant to you, please write not applicable. The office may go through and reach out to you for any clarification if in case of any discrepancy. Applicants are requested to refer to the scheme related information and India Alliance policies while filling the application. The links for which is already provided in the application form itself, but we request you to go through before filling in the application form. So one important point is that funding cannot be requested for regulatory clinical trials under this scheme. So the first is the top sheet. The first section is the top sheet. So on the very top of the sheet is you can see the reference number. The India Alliance office will designate a reference number when the application is received. Therefore, please leave this row blank. The other details like the details of PI and co-PI, host institution, city, these must be entered against respective title. And in case there are more co-PIs in the application, please copy the format and paste it below in the table. So ensure that all the participants like PI and co-PI are listed in this table, but do not add any collaborator or mentor or even sponsor in this sheet. We have separate column, separate rows for that later in the application. The next is section 1, which is participating institutions. So please ensure that all the details are included in the table. In case institutions are planning to submit a single institutional CRC grant, they must provide a justification for the same in this section itself, and also mention the department, the name of the department. Next is the team composition and management. Applicants are requested to include information of PIs and co-PIs nominated by the participating institute in the format given in this form. In case of more than 3 co-PIs, please duplicate the table to include more information of other co-PIs, and the PIs may have to provide appropriate justification to why the KPI is required for the proposed work. In the same section under time commitment, please ensure time commitment is listed for all the KPIs in the application. If required, please add more columns to this table, and formulas have been included in this table for your convenience, which will help you in calculating the correct time value. Next is the subsection which is dedicated for CRTP. Please clearly mention the number of CRTP fellowships you would like to avail during this proposed project duration. In case you do not wish to opt for CRTP, please mention 0 in this box. So in addition to this number, please also provide details of the participating institutions, the full address and name of the institution. Applicants must identify a program head and coordinators and also mention their time commitment towards this program. The next is the most important proposal section. So the grant start date indicated here is 1st October 2023 by default. However, in case of an award, PIs can negotiate the start date with India Alliance. The project summary and lay summary in this sheet are very important sections, and applicants must ensure that all the information in this section is clear, is in format, and is within the prescribed word limit. Next is the details of the project. Applicants must go through all the instructions and guidelines before writing the proposal. The proposal must be within the framework listed in these guidelines, and please do ensure that the proposal does not exceed 5,000 words. And all the graphs, figures, and prelim data should be placed immediately after the proposal and must not exceed 3 pages. For CRC grants, as I mentioned, clinical study design unit or CSTU is a mandatory aspect, and applicants must provide details of this unit and its availability in all the participating institutions. So all these details must be provided in the proposal itself. The next is the CV section, and it includes the CVs of PIs and co-PIs and must be provided in the same sequence as in the top sheet. It must start with the PI CV, followed by co-PI 1, 2, and so on. CVs of the CRTP head and coordinators also must be provided in the same format and must be attached after the last co-PI CV. So please do ensure, or please do not add any CV of your collaborator or mentor in the application. Also, do not forget to write the name of the PI and co-PI and also mention their appropriate role of each PI or co-PI in the CV section. As for the host institution and the sponsor, the name of the institution should be very clear, and so is the sponsor information. So the sponsor is typically an established senior researcher of the sponsoring institution who has the administrative authority or administrative responsibility to sign up for the India Alliance award conditions. In case of this is in case of an award. So please note that anyone participating in your application or any other application in the ongoing current round cannot be a sponsor. In such cases, applicants may need to identify a new sponsor for their application. So in the same section for question 3 and 4, please be very specific when you mention your highest degree. For question 4, where applicants need to mention that number of years of running an independent research group, please provide a numerical value. And again, in case of any discrepancy, the office may reach out to you for clarification and seek additional documentation. In the CV section, applicants also need to provide details of their publication. So please provide a maximum of 10 publications that are relevant to the proposed work. So in addition to this list, the applicants also are required to provide the PubMed search string in this column below. So there are around 13 to 14 important questions under this section, and all the questions are mandatory. Please do not leave any row blank, and in case the format for all the CVs is the same, so for all the participants, so applicants are requested to make a duplicate copy of the CV for adding more co-PIs in the application. Next section is the budget section. It starts with the budget overview table. Please ensure the values are correct and the net total does not exceed 10 crores. We have provided formulas in this section wherever required. Please use the formula to calculate the total costs. In case of any cost mismatch, the office will consider the lower cost only. So therefore, ensure that there are no cost mismatches in the application. The budget allocation table is a very important table in the budget section, and PIs must specify the fund sharing for each participating institution. Please note that fund allocation is only permissible for PIs and co-PIs in the application and cannot be allocated for any collaborator or sponsor. According to the eligibility, the PI and co-PI must hold an academic or research post and have a salaried position for the duration of the award period. In case your academic or research position requires you to get all or part of your salary from extramural funding, then the PI must be from an eligible Indian host institution, and the institution must confirm in writing that their employment contract requires him or her to raise the salary from extramural funding. So in this case, a letter must be attached under the attachment section. And in addition to this letter, PIs must also provide strong justification under this table for the salary requested. For materials and consumables, please provide item-wise justification for all the materials and consumables listed in this table. And please note that cost must not be repeated again in the table below. As for the equipments, applicants are required to list each equipment as a separate item. And to calculate the total amount of each equipment, please add the cost of the equipment under each head plus the maintenance costs required for the specific duration. In case there are other sources of contribution for any equipment purchase, you may subtract that amount from the total cost. Please do mention the location where the equipment would be placed. That will be very helpful. Once again, item-wise, the justification must be provided for each item for which the cost is requested in the table above. Applicants can request costs for access charges, animal associated costs, and miscellaneous. Formulas have been provided in some sections, and applicants are required to use the formula to calculate the total cost of each item. In addition to these points, applicants must go through the disallowed costs listed on India Alliance website under the costing policy for grants, and they should not request costs for those titles. Please advise we advise the PIs to go through the costing policies of grants on India Alliance website before filling in these sections. The application form already has a link to this web page. Followed by the budget section, we have the data management plan and public engagement plan. Now, these are some sections that must be relevant to your proposed work, and a detailed data management plan and public engagement plan is expected from the team. Please do ensure that the description is elaborate but within the prescribed word limit. Then section 8 is research involving human participation. Applicants must fill this section if they plan to include human experiments in the proposed study. If your project requires access to patients under treatment at hospital or clinical facility other than your host institution, please provide the name of the clinician or clinicians along with the details of the clinical facility. In addition to this, a letter confirming the access or collaboration from competent authority must be attached to the application. Applicants must also provide relevant sample size calculations, selection criteria, any statistical criteria in the section below. Similarly, if the proposed work involves animal experiments, then applicants must fill the section and also provide power analysis or animal number calculations for the proposed animal studies. Applicants must ensure that the number indicated here matches with the number in the proposal as well as the budget section. Then there are a couple of more sections like the risks of research misuse and conflicts of interest. The instructions are provided already in the format. We advise you to visit the India Alliance website to read more about the India Alliance award conditions and India Alliance award policies before filling out these sections. Next is the undertakings from PI. This is a mandatory undertaking. All the participating investigators must ensure that all the sections are complete and sign this undertaking form. All investigators may sign in a single sheet itself and submit it. Another important section is the institutional undertaking. The institutional undertaking must be provided on the institutional letterhead only. So please copy the template provided in the form to the letterhead, and please request the sponsor or the head of institutions to fill it up and sign the institutional undertaking. This undertaking must also include the stamp of the institution or the person concerned. So all the participating institutions must provide an institutional undertaking along with their application. The next section provides options for applicants to suggest names up to 3 potential reviewers who they feel appropriate to evaluate the proposal. Applicants may also suggest any restricted reviewers who they feel may have a conflict of interest. Either way, please clearly specify in this table if they are a potential reviewer or restricted reviewer and the justification for adding their names in this column. The last section is the attachment section, and there are a few mandatory documents that needs to be attached if they are applicable to you. For example, if you have added any equipment worth 50 lakhs or above, a quotation must be attached under this section. This is mandatory. If your position requires you to raise salary from extramural funding, then as mentioned earlier, a letter of support from your institution must be attached. Applicants may also attach a list of collaborators with the details of their name, affiliation, and their contribution for this proposed work. In case the proposed work involves the use and transport of patient samples, a letter of support from the clinical collaborator must also be attached under this section. So please do not attach any letter of recommendation or any collaboration letters or publications or any CV under this section. So once everything is ready, when the entire application is ready for submission, please remove the very first page, which is the general instructions. Then organize the documents in the given order and convert the Word file to PDF. Please ensure that the file size does not exceed 20 MB, and please send your application to clinical.research@indiaalliance.org. So once the office receives your application, an acknowledgement email will be sent to you with a reference number. So if in case you do not receive any email within 2 working days, please kindly follow up. This is a mandatory step, and only then the submission process will be complete. So for any queries, please feel free to write to us on our email ID clinical.research@indiaalliance.org. Please allow us 3 to 4 working days to respond to your email. We suggest you collate all your queries in a single email so that we are able to provide you a timely response for all the queries raised. One last point before I end this presentation is please note that the deadline for submission is 15th June 2022, 2 p.m. Any application received beyond this deadline will not be considered for this round. Yeah, thank you so much for your patient listening.